Can I just move on then to public engagement? Now, within the 2019 Climate Act, there was a requirement for a sort of one-off standalone climate assembly. I'm interested in hearing from local government colleagues about, the linkage between Scottish Government work on behaviour change, support for communities that are really driving action on the ground, where that's currently sitting. So a reflection on that would be useful, but also just a wider reflection as to whether there's anything that should be in this bill, other changes that are being proposed through this bill. Could that drive more public engagement, work with communities? Your impressions on that would be quite useful. So can I turn to Claudia and Alison to start with, and just on your reflections on how that climate action planning is actually landing in communities? Are we utilising the resources of communities fully within that?
I would say, and Alison and I, because we're neighbouring local authorities, we actually share a climate hub. So the Scottish Government has been funding climate hubs across Scotland to do that community engagement piece and connect all the different action network hubs in these regional areas for that. That's really around their engagement piece. There's been so our particular hub is called NESCAN, the North East Scotland Climate Action Network, and because that is funded so well, that they've had opportunities to go into communities to do local climate assemblies. They've also linked with different council departments. So I know they've been working with some of our areas to sort of engage the local communities in those specific areas and the different challenges that they would have in different parts of Aberdeenshire. So certainly the community side engagement at the moment is being driven through these hubs. I'm not sure if I've not looked back to see if NESCAN actually responded to the call for views on the bill, and if they've been able to do some engagement and provide some of that feedback through their response. So I can't answer on that bit.
Alison?
So we do have collaborative working in the city in terms of our place-based work. We have a Net Zero Aberdeen. It has 6 enabling strategies. One of those is empowerment. They're each led by a different organisation, and NESCANs did contribute to that process. So they are a fundamental part of a multifaceted jigsaw of pieces which are brought together. And I think community engagement is hugely beneficial in this journey. It may not be so concerned with the ins and outs of the mechanisms of the bill in itself, but as what can be delivered on the ground that will make meaningful change to people's lives, and where that can have co-benefits for their day-to-day actions. So yes, I think public engagement is important, and in terms of this bill, building understanding of how that might connect to what can be delivered on a local basis and engage communities in taking forward local-based actions. That would be beneficial.
Yeah. Jamie?
Well, I mean, clearly community engagement is critical in terms of the behaviour changes that we need in order to, make progress against the sources of emissions that are remaining. I've been involved in quite a lot of kind of stuff around place-based climate action and governance. And one thing I've observed, and I don't know if the bill can help to address this, is that it's very, very fragmented. It's very, very subjective to competitive and continuity of funding. So you wind up with a lot of kind of very well-intentioned organisations all coming along separately, not necessarily having continuity, being very reliant on volunteers and enthusiasm, it's not necessarily acting as a collective, and that's a bit of a struggle. It could be better. I don't know if the bill can fix that or not by providing a bit more continuity of funding, a bit more support for a more coordinated approach to community engagement.
What would that look like? Would that be a requirement on the plan to deal with public participation engagement, or because as I mentioned earlier, the 2019 Act had a very specific citizens' assembly at the heart of it. That's only one way to cut it in terms of public engagement, I guess. But I'm interested in what your thoughts would be about how you cement that into the planning going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to some of the points we've made earlier about giving people confidence that this is a kind of long-term thing. So I think you're looking at a commitment to a public engagement strand of your activity on what this means for people in terms of the changes that are expected of them, but also of why they're making those changes. So it's not just a top-down. It's this is why this is happening. These are the benefits that you will realise from this change, because we are undoubtedly expecting people to make changes to that materially affect how they go about their day-to-day lives.
Okay. Any other thoughts at all? Yeah.
I think the whole point of public engagement is to communicate information, and unfortunately there's still some unfortunate misinformation, be it deliberate or accidental. So I think in terms of what we might be able to do with the bill is how it's set up some sort of mechanism to establish a trusted voice. And just off the top of my head, an example is the BBC Verify has an approach to when there is information circulating around which is not correct. It can try and paint a more balanced picture. And I think that's really important, because when you're asking people to change their behaviours to achieve the plans, it needs to be based on the right information, and people will naturally latch on to information that fits with their narrative. And here I'm thinking examples of information that we're seeing in agricultural circles about emissions from agriculture. There's still uncertainties. We need better information to support that. So in terms of engaging with the public, it's essential that when we are presenting information, it is the right information on how to achieve the reductions, and that it comes from a trusted voice.
Okay, thanks. Cornelius, did you want to come in?
Yes, so in terms of public engagement, I mean, I agree with what colleagues have said, but I would probably add that there are two dimensions to this. There's the engagement in terms of this is what we want to achieve as society, but there's also a level of engagement which ought to realize that it's actually the actions of individuals in society which will make a change, or which will deliver the change that we want to see. So if we look at the areas that remain kind of the key areas of challenge at the moment, it's going to be looking at how people heat their homes. These are decisions that people are going to be making within their households. It is about how people move themselves from point A to point B. So it's almost looking at individuals as intervention points for achieving what we want to achieve, in addition to members of society that we need to engage with on this societal challenge that we face. So really separating out that, I think, is important, because the type of engagement that you need to make, depending on which perspective you take there, is going to be very different in my view.
Okay.
Thank you.